Hello, my name is Bill List, and this is my story. I grew up in a town, and my mom moved there with my stepdad because my dad passed away, and I didn't know anything until I was around 6, 7 years old, what was actually going on, and I grew up as a lonely child, but I did have two brothers, older brothers. My stepdad had 10 kids. My mom was blind from the time I was 6 until I was 13, and she ended up passing away from alcoholism. She was an alcoholic. And from that day on, I swore I wouldn't drink. But after about 3 months of living with my stepdad, I couldn't handle it. I wanted to run away, but I knew that there was something more for me. And so I called my aunt and uncle, and I asked them if I could come live with them. And it took a while, but they finally said yes, I could come live with them. And I got out on my own at 17, and it's when everything started to really change, because I was on my own. Nobody was going to give me anything. And when I left my aunt and uncles, they told me I wouldn't graduate. I graduated, got married. My son was born January 6th. And that's when life really started getting hard. And I started drinking on the weekends, and I was smoking pot, and it wasn't a all the time thing. It was only the weekends gradually. And by the time I was 25, I was into full-blown alcoholic. I was drinking on the weekends constantly, staying out late, just doing things that nobody should be doing when they're married and have two kids. And then I ended up working out at Ravenna Aluminum, and I was there we'd been in Warren, and I was there for a couple years, but it got to the point where I was making enough money to where I wanted to buy a house. And this led to my first divorce, which I told my wife we were going to move out of the apartments we were in and get a house, and she said she didn't want to get off of welfare. And that was my first divorce, because I told her that, if you ain't going to go get off of welfare, then I can't be with you. I can't do that. I don't want to be on welfare for the rest of my life. So anyhow, that led to a divorce, and I was working, but it was off and on. And then I met my second wife, which we were together for 20 years. I was still working off and on, and the alcohol just kept getting worse, and I was married but not married, because I was at the bar more than I was home. I would go to work, and then I would go home, and I'd stay at the bar until 3 o'clock in the morning and come home belligerent. And I did this for 10 years. And after a while, she got sick of it. And finally, she threw me out. But I was in and out. And I would stay at other people's houses just so I wouldn't have to go home. And finally, I lost my last job, and she threw me out for good. And that's when I started going to AA meetings. And actually, I lost my job at Walmart because I was drinking, and they had found out that I was in jail over paraphernalia, and so they fired me. And after that, I was going to Rock of Grace, and it was after I'd been going to the Celebrate Recovery program. They invited me to Rock of Grace, and that's when I found my home, because then I found out what Pentecostal was. And ever since then, I've been there, been home. It's been my home. But for 2 years before that, or after that, I was still off and on doing alcohol. I still couldn't get things right. And finally, I was at the mission, and I was there for about 6 weeks. I was doing good, and then I screwed up, got a paycheck, went out drinking, got thrown out of the mission. I ended up behind the Rock of Grace that night, and the next morning I called Randy Partridge, and we talked, and he talked to Pastor Mark, and Pastor Mark talked and said that he'd get me into Teen Challenge, and I was in Teen Challenge in 2009 to 2011, and that's where everything changed. It changed my life. It put me on the straight path. It broke the curse that the family curse that I was in, of the alcohol and the drugs. And it was 2 weeks before I got out of Teen Challenge that I was face down on the floor, just pleading to God to take away all that was the problem with me. And he did. He took it away. And I came out of there a new person, a new creation. I've been sober for, my anniversary date was 11/11/2020. I've been doing the Lord's work whenever I can, and it's a beautiful thing to be with the Lord, because the drinking, the alcohol, it isn't all what it is, what they say it is, because it's just a turmoil of bad things after another. Even though you think you're having fun, you're not having fun. And if anyone's out there and they are having a bad time, look to the Lord, because Jesus is the way, the light, and the way, the life with is, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I be afraid? Whom shall I fear? The Lord is my stronghold and my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Psalms 27:1, and I live by it, and He'll get you through it. He's gotten me through it, and if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here to this day. And I thank all the people that have in my life that have been there for me and that are still there for me, because my sisters and brothers in Christ are the ones that kept me from going back into that pit of nonsense. And for that, this is my story.